Okay, guys, I am going to create a um, model's headshot, and I brought in a very kind of rough photo for this on purpose. So I'm not in the studio, I'm outside with some natural lighting, but I think it's better that we do this with this. So I'm going to use some adjustments to begin with. And we haven't really talked about this in Photo 2, but I want to. So right over on top of your layers panel, there's the properties, and then right next to that's the adjustments. If I click on that, um, you have some very quick ways to edit your photos. Just like if you brought in a raw photo into Photoshop, a panel would open and would ask you about some raw adjustments, and you can put them on before you bring them in. But if you're just bringing in a JPEG, you can just click on these adjustments. And I usually don't like to tell students about these, like in Photo 1, because I want to show you the harder way and and all the tricks before I give you these easier ones. So this is an easy way to just kind of adjust your photo quickly, almost like using Lightroom. So the first one I'm going to show you is just exposure. And every time I click on that, and I'm just hovering over these, and they tell you what they are. So exposure is the second one over from the left on the top roll. And if I click on that, it automatically adds a layer. And up in the panel, it has exposure on the top, has offset and gamma correction. I'm just going to grab that exposure, and you'll see if I go to the right, it's almost like it's opening the shutter, right, or the aperture. So I'm getting more light in there. And if I go to the left, I can kind of get a darker exposure, or less exposure, I should say. And there's offset right that, and you'll see it really affects the shadows around there. So I'm going to choose that. And then gamma correction, same thing. It's really going to affect some of those shadows. And I'm going to stop right there. So that's exposure. Next one I'm going to go to is my brightness and contrast. So if this is pretty bright right now, I'm going to pull some of that out a little bit to the left. And the contrast, if I go to the right, I kind of increase it, right? So I'm going to stop right there. Next, I'm going to go to back to adjustments, and I'm going to go to my levels. And I've shown you this before, and it's just grabbing the middle one can adjust the lightness and darkness of this photo. So I'm going to keep it, I don't want it too dark. I mean, it looks kind of nice sometimes, but not on an actor's headshot, Let's keep it a little bit light like that. So I've added 3 so far. I can also go to the vibrance curves. I'm going to save that for later. I'm going to go to vibrance, and it'll just bring out the vibrancy of those colors. You'll see if I go to the right, it becomes much more vibrant. So like her cheeks become a little bit more red. It's a little bit more bluer in her eye. And then saturation is kind of the same thing. Sometimes people choose to take the vibrance down real low to where it pull all the colors out. Then they'll just correct it by going to the right with the saturation and kind of bringing it back. And if I click that on and off, you'll see it's a pretty subtle difference, but it's kind of nice. I don't know. I'm gonna leave it like that. Decide, yeah. Okay, so that's a good way to quickly edit kind of the exposure and the brightness and the color going in. So I want to combine all these, and I can just hold down my shift key, and I'm going to click on the levels, click on the brightness, click on the exposure, and click on the background. And I'm just going to right click on it and say merge layers. And it'll turn it back into one. I'm going to unlock this layer. It has a lock on it. I can drag this lock down to the trash can, or I can just double click on it and it will do the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to double click on this layer and name this headshot. All right, first thing I'm going to do is add a new layer. So just left of the trash can, I'm going to click on that, and it adds that transparent layer. I'm going to double click on that and name this blemishes. And we're going to get rid of some of these blemishes, the imperfections on the face. So, you know, if we are doing something like this with a model's headshot, this work is going to be very subtle. We're not going to see a huge amount of changes in it. It's very subtle. And as we go through this, you'll kind of say to yourself, well, that really didn't affect it very much. But it's the little things in a headshot. It's the very tiny little things that make a difference. So bear with me on that, right? Okay. So from here, I'm going to I'm going to go up to grab the healing brush. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember. I'm going to grab the healing brush, not the spot healing brush, just the regular healing brush. And I'm going to go up and check this top on the option bar where it says current layer. I think it is default. And I want it to say current and below is what I want. Okay. And the way the healing brush works is I hold down my control key or my shift key, and I think on a Mac it's my option key. I think for you guys on a PC or your Chromebooks it is the shift key. So you hold down the shift key, and I'm going to make my brush, let's see, put the hardness at 0. I'm going to make the size about, maybe about 40. Yeah. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. And the way this tool works is just by holding down that shift key somewhere in their photo and clicking at the same time. It's making a selection. So you probably can't see where I'm at right here. But I want to find a part of the face where the complexion's really nice. So like right above her nose, it's kind of smooth in there. And I hold down the shift key the first time, and that creates the selection. So when I go over something else, it's going to use that nice soft part of the skin. If I was going to go over to the hair, you see how it has that part of the skin on it? I would do the same thing. I'd hold down the shift key and click on my mouse or left click to get this background to pull away from that hair. And I'll show you that in a bit. But for right now, I'm working on the face, right? So she had some piercings on her lower lip, and I want to go to those in a minute. But first I'm going to start right here on the face, and I'm just clicking a little bit here and there, right? It's a little mole here. I'm not going to mess with that too much. I want, I'm going to get some of these right here. So a lot of people, if you take their photo, they will say, you know, please get rid of my wrinkles, you know, please get rid of the wrinkles in my forehead. So I'm going to do that. I can just, you'll see I can just hold it down and kind of brush over it and get some of those wrinkles. She doesn't have that many because she's so young, but you see one right here. I'll just show you how to do that. I'm just clicking and dragging. All these imperfections that I see, there's like maybe a little scar right here. I'm going over that. There's a little color spot there. I'm going to go over that. There's a few, you know, just, there's nothing wrong with her skin at all. And, but we're just taking it out, some of those little discolorations, right? I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to try to get some of these rough spots right over here. And anytime I want to change this brush to it, I can just hold down that shift key again in the area that I'm looking for. So I want to get, she has a little bit of a, it's probably cold out that day, a little bit of flush raspberry, a little bit. I'm getting rid of those. So we're really trying to get the quality of, say, a model would have, right? Here's like a natural freckle or mole. You want to kind of leave that. Right on her nose is a little bit of a discoloration. I'm going to come over here and get some of these. You'll see, if I really zoom in, you'll see that she has some, I can get rid of those. Like models would always want you to do that. She had some piercings up here. I'm going to click on those and just touch those up just for the sake of this photo. You know, you always talk to your model when you go into the editing, post-production, have you. And you say, you know, how do you feel? Do you want these, do you want some of these wrinkles? Do you want some of these, maybe there's a scar? Do you want that taken out? You don't do it on your own. You kind of want to consult with your model. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. And I'm going to, I just want this kind of smooth. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna make my brush small one more time. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm gonna make my brush smaller again, and I'm just gonna hold down my shift key and get the redness of her lips, right, as my selection. I'm just gonna come over those little marks where she had a piercing and get rid of those. And the same over here. I'm just going to click in this area, just right to the right of that. Hold down my shift key, then come over here. And I'm clicking to subtly get rid of those. Okay. And I'm going to zoom out. Out, not in. Okay. It looks much smoother. If I click on the eye, you'll see that it's very subtle. But I did remove some things, and her face does look a little bit smoother, right? Okay, I'm going to work on the eyes now, okay? So I'm going to grab my selection tool, get out of that healing brush, and I'm gonna add a curves adjustment layer. So I'm going to come up to here, over my layers panel. I'm going to go down to the adjustment layer. and I'm gonna hit curves. And what I want to do is set the blend mode to dodge. So I'm going to go to the blend mode and I'm going to click on dodge. Color dodge. So very bright, right? I wouldn't want that for my photo, but I'm just going to use it for the eyes. So I'm going to go over to this layer mask right here, make sure I have it highlighted, and I want to turn this to black. So I go up to Image, Adjustments, and Invert. And you'll see it turns that to black. Now I want to grab a brush. I'm going to grab a regular brush over my left panel, and I'm going to turn the opacity down to about 10. And yeah. And I'm going to zoom in quite a bit on this. So I'm zooming in, going into her eyes. And I want to make my brush very small for this, probably about 30. Yeah. And I'm just going to go around the eyes at this point. And I'm just going to get those white, just the white part of her eyes. I'm just going over that with my brush. I'm left clicking and holding it down. And you say, well, it's not doing anything. But it is. If I click off that layer for a second, you'll see that I am adding that. I'm going to turn it up a little bit, the opacity. I'm going to take it up to 25, make it a little bit lighter in there. I'm going to go over it one more time. I also want to get where the light's naturally reflecting on the top part. I'm going to go on there too. I'm going to go back to this one and then get that top. Okay, while I'm here, I want to get the white part of her eyes, but I don't want it to be too bright. So now I'm really going to turn this opacity down to about 10. And I'm going to come in here and start very carefully going over the white part of her eyes. I might have to really zoom in to get that. So if I come over here, maybe I have to make my brush even a little bit smaller. And there we go. Okay. And I'm going to come over to these. And I want to get, I'm just getting rid of some of those, the redness that's around there, making that a little bit wider, but it's very subtle. All this work is subtle. If I click on and off that layer, you'll see that it is very subtle, but it is, this is the work of doing touch-up, post-production on your editing, especially model work. Okay, it's looking good. I'm going to raise it up a little bit more. I'm going to go back to like 30 and go over the in the part of the eye one more time to get that. Same over here. So if you find yourself a good model and get some light on their face, they'll probably really like you doing a photo like that. Maybe your mother or father, and really getting rid of their wrinkles and blemishes and lightening up their eyes, getting all the redness out of it. So if I click on that on and off, you'll see it does have quite the effect on that eye, and it's subtle as it is. Okay, so before I go back, before I go any further, I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going to go back to this blemishes layer. And I wanted to show you, I'm going to grab the healing brush again. And so it was obviously damp outside. She's got a lot of hairs that are just going everywhere. I want to get rid of those strands because they're distracting me. But I'm going to use that healing brush tool, but I want to hold down the shift key so I get this background here, right? So I hold down the shift key and I select that. Now I can go over these wild loose hairs here because they're just kind of distracting. I'm going to get this one and this one. Definitely that one. Come over here to this. Maybe some of these up here. Maybe this one, this one. I saw one on her face that I want to get rid of. Maybe that one, maybe this one too. This. You don't want to do it too much because then it looks like you've given her a haircut. But I don't want that distraction look like that. Okay, I also want to get rid of this one on her face. So I'm going to hold down my shift key again to grab something on her face. So I'm holding down my shift key. Oops. To get that, and I'm just going to go over that hair on her face. Oops, I went too much there. Go there. Yeah. Oh, it just doesn't want me to do it. Okay. And there. All right. So, looking good. I'm going back to the curves layer. And now I'm going to put a stamp. Don't know if we've discussed this. I think we did. If you were in my Photo 1 class, I had you do it. I don't know if we've done it so far this year. But I'm going to create a stamp. And the way I do that is I press on your Chromebook, I press Control, Shift, and Alt, all at the same time. Okay, so I'm pressing Control, Shift, and Alt. And then I have the one hand, I'm pressing down all three of those keys. And with my other hand, I'm going to press the letter E on the keyboard. And you'll see it creates a new layer up here for me, right? Okay, and now what I want to do is create a high pass. I'm going to make this a little bit sharper. And the way I do that is I'm going to go up to my filter, but first I'm going to start, I need to make this black and white. The way I do that, I'm just trying to figure out, I'm trying to figure out the keys for your Chromebooks instead of my iMac. So I want to hold down Control, Shift, and the letter U. Yep, that's right. So it's Command, Control, Shift, and the letter U on my keyboard. And that makes it black and white, okay? And then I'm going to go up to the filter, like I was saying, and I'm going to go to Other, down at the very bottom, and I'm going to go to where it says High Pass. And you'll see it covers up this photo, and you can look in there, you can see some of the details. I want this radius to be at 2.0. Yeah. And then I'm going to hit OK. And then I go down to the blend mode, right? And I am going to hit overlay. Yeah. And if I turn that on and off and look at it, you see it's very subtle too. Did it sharpen it? It did, but it's not a lot. Let's see, if I zoom in, maybe you'll see. If you look at her eye for a second and I turn it off, And you see, turn it on, it does add a little bit of sharpness, and that's what we're looking for. Just a little bit. Everything's subtle in this photo. Okay, from here I'm going to add, I'm going to do some dodging and burning. So I'm going to add 2 curves layers, right? And dodge and burn is basically the term for making the darkers a little bit darker and making the lighters a little bit lighter. So it kind of boosts the tone. And the way I do it is I add 2 layers. I'm going to go down to my adjustment layer. And I'm going to go curves 1. And I'm just going to repeat that. Curves 2. All right, on the top one, I'm going to change the blend mode to screen. Makes it very light, right? And then I want to fill this mask in and make it black. It's like I did before. So the way I do that is I go up to Image, Adjustments, and go down to Invert. Okay. I'm going to go click Highlight the bottom layer. And on this layer, I'm going to go up to the blend mode and go to multiply and make it very dark. And I'm going to do the same thing with this mask. I'm going to go up to Adjustments, Image, Adjustments, and Invert. Okay, so now I'm just going to grab a brush, right? And I'm going to come over here to my layers panel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the left column. Grab a brush. I'm going to turn the opacity down on this to 10. Yep. And I'm going to make my brush pretty big, probably about, I'm going to say 300, 400. Let's do 400. And all I'm going to do is go over the dark parts, and make them a little bit darker. So I'm going to start with the hair. I'm always going to go with this hairline. Where I see dark, I want to darken it up a little bit. So you see it's very subtle again. I want to go for the dark parts in the hair. And some darkness up here. And down around there. And there. There. So I'm starting there. I'm going to go underneath her chin and make that. I'm just looking for all the shadows, right? And making them a little bit darker. Okay, I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, left clicking, and I'm going to go down to some of the shadows around her face, like right here, right? And I'm just clicking there. On her lips, making those areas darker a little bit. And underneath her nose, that shadow. And her eyes. Let me zoom in a little bit. I'm definitely going to get these eyebrows, right? Eyebrows always help create that contrast in that photo. And these dark shadows under here, maybe a little bit right there. Definitely right here. Yeah, it's looking nice. Almost create that illusion. In this area, under the nose, the nostrils, this part of the lip, underneath this lip here. Yeah. Okay, it's looking great. You know, I could just punch this a little bit, make my brush really big and punch this rouge area. She's not really wearing the makeup, but I can darken that a little bit over here on each side. And then when I lighten it, I'll lighten it just a little bit around there to kind of give it that look. Yeah, looks good. It's looking better. Just going over the dark areas to just make them a little bit darker. Okay, I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up to the next layer on top, and this will be lighter. So I'm going to look for those light areas, and I'm going to lighten them up. Like I said, right around her cheek, the top of her cheekbones, to kind of give it that effect a little bit more. Where I see light is where I want light. Right on the light of her chin. I can, oh no, not the wheel of death. I can actually just make it really big and go right over her eye one time, just to sap it a little bit. And maybe some of the highlights in her hair. Yeah. Okay, and that's basically dodging and burning. I'm going to do one more thing, well, a couple more things, but I'm going to go to I'm going to go and add another layer. I'm going to get my selection tool, and I'm going to go up to adjustments up here one more time. And I'm going to go down to the bottom row, and the one over from the left, it says create a new selective color. I'm going to click on that. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the whites. And I can click on that, and I want the whites. And I'm going to go down to where it says black. And I'm going to pull this slider a little bit to the left and reduce that. And you may say, why are you doing that? Well, what I'm doing is I'm pulling the blacks out of the whites. And all that's doing is making the whites a little bit whiter, if that makes any sense. It's very subtle. If I turn that on and off, you'll just barely see what's going on. And I'm going to do the same thing with the blacks. I'm going to go to the blacks, click on that, and drag this a little bit to the left, and then to the right to see how I'm doing. Just a little bit to the left. And I'm going to click this on and off again. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I was a little bit to the right, sorry. Click this on and off again. Yeah, I think it looks good. Okay, we're almost there. I'm going to add one more layer. I'm going to add a curves layer. I'm coming down to the bottom, and I'm going to add a curves layer. And up in here, I'm just going to, on my curves line, I'm going to add 2 points. And this is really just adding that extra punch. So I'm going to drag this left one up a little bit and go down a little bit and see where I want my shadows. I think I'm going to go down. Typically, I kind of make an S with this, right? So this goes up, and this typically goes down. So this comes up a little bit, and then this will come down. And that's where I'm at. Okay, I'm going to add a stamp one more time. So if you remember how to do that, it is Control, Shift, Alt, and E to make a stamp. So I'm going to hold down those 3 and press E, and it creates all those layers into one, and all that work that I did. So I'm going to do one more sharpening on the way out. I'm going to do another high pass. So just like we did last time. And the way I do that is I go to Control, Shift, and the letter U. So I'm going to hold down Control and the Shift key and the letter U, and make it black and white. And then I go up to Filter, Other, High Pass. I'm going to set this to just maybe 1 this time. maybe 1.5. And I'm gonna hit OK. And then I'm gonna go to my blend mode. And this time, last time I did overlay, this time I'm just gonna do a soft light. And I'm done. I'm gonna zoom out or zoom in, you can see, and zoom out. And I think it's done. It looks really good, I think. And that's it. Make sure you save your work. Save it as a Photoshop PSD file and a JPEG. Thanks.